Well done. You've made it to the 7th and final video of the Data Dashboard series. In this video, we'll be looking at amending the final pieces of our data dashboard, looking at the settings and profile page, and a few other things. Now, you've probably noticed a change of scenery in our surroundings. Well, if you've wondered where I've been for the last week or two and why I haven't uploaded the final video, this is why. I've moved house, and as a result, so has the studio or the home office that I worked in and recorded our videos. So you can see probably now the whole place is a bit of a mess, but we'll get there in the end. We'll make it as it once was. So before we jump into the code and get going on the final little bits that we need to do to complete the app, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel to keep ahead of any new videos and series on the way, and give me a follow on the Hashton on Twitter. But let's go ahead and finish off the app now. So in the app, this is where we are currently right now in a completely non-logged in state. We can see that we've got our footer here and we've got the rest of our app. Now, one of the things I've wanted to do during the process of this app is actually have this footer down at the bottom where you would naturally expect the footer to be, because it's not the central focus. It shouldn't be in eyeline view or headline view as it would be in newspaper terms. So in terms of UI, really this shouldn't be in eyeline at all. It should be further down. So the first thing we'll start with is actually moving this footer into the right place. So we'll go into our app and open up the footer style sheet. So within the style sheet, what we want to do is change this to absolute. Then simply over here, we want to just change this to right 0 as well, so we have it nice and centered. And that should mean that this goes all the way to the bottom and it also is centralized. So let's go take a look. So there we go. So very simply, we've added some footer styling so that we keep it always at the bottom. So let's sign in to see what that looks like with content. So signed in as Curious Byte, and then let's say we go to the data page. That works there. Let's go to the profile page. Oh, there's nothing on there. Let's go to the home page, and we can see that works out fine. Let's see if we can reduce this width and see if we can. Yeah, and you can see it just pushes itself down, and yeah, it's fine. Okay, brilliant. So I'm happy with the footer. The other thing that I had that I wanted to do is actually add some options to this avatar here. Because right now all we've got is log in and log out. I actually want the profile page to be linked here. So we'll just go to the header and amend this so we can add a profile menu option here very quickly. So we'll go to header, we can close this down now, go up here. Now we are going to be using the theme from MUI. So we'll just call that in now. Make sure this is imported. So we've currently got some unused handlers here, some unused functions, so we don't need them right now, so we can get rid of these and just tidy up some of the code. And we can see that this use state is not used at all anymore, so we can delete that. We'll just double check the code very quickly. So if you have a look, it seems fine. It doesn't seem to be an issue. So yeah, we could get rid of those just fine. So just under here, what we want to do is add a new menu item. And this essentially will have a link to our profile page. So we've done that here. So we've got the text here that says profile. And then we've got the next link here, which is tapped into our primary text color. And we're saying we don't want any text decoration, and take us to the profile dashboard page. So we just need to make sure we've imported this. There we go. That has been imported. Yep. We can delete these two here. We're no longer using them, and that should be enough, as simple as that is. So make sure we're removing the text decoration that we get naturally from next link, and just tap it into your theme so that when you go from light to dark mode, it also switches to. And there we go, there's our profile page. So if we go and change it to light mode, you can see that that changes text color as well now, because we're tapped into the MUI theme. Click that, and we go to the profile page. Speaking of profile page, this is the next page we're going to work on. Currently, there's nothing here, but what I imagined is that this is a page where you go and amend your details for your profile. This would be tied into some kind of backend API where it saves your changes on your profile there. So let's go update that now. So profiles is actually a page component in our Next.js setup. So you can see it's in pages, but we're going to build everything here. So I want to keep this profile h1 to signify what this page is about. And the next thing I want to do is create a box layout to contain all my content. Now, because I'm going to be using multiple elements on the same level, because I'll be using sibling elements, I'll just need to add a React fragment. Make sure we've imported this. So now we've got our box component, and then I'll just add some additional text. So we're adding typography because we want to tie it into the theme. So make sure that's imported from Material UI. And then we're also using our session information from Nextdoor to determine some of the user information. So we want the username, and we're going to welcome them to the profile. So we need to make sure we've imported session. If we have a quick look for session, we can see quick use here. We'll go copy that, bring that up under here, and then we have access to session. Brilliant. Right, let's go have a look and see what that looks like. So this is our profile page now. So we've got our box layout to hold our content in, and we've just added a subheader here which welcomes whoever it is. It just happens to be on the Curious Byte account to the profile. Then it just grabs the username. Now just under here, I'm going to add a paper component with some of our inputs and text fields. So I've added a paper component, which is going to hold all our inputs and text fields from MUI. Text fields are essentially the input component that MUI adds. We'll just need to make sure we've imported this, and we'll make sure we just get that specifically from paper. We don't need to destructure it because we are directly getting it from paper. So we want to add some padding as well, just on the outside, because we want to differentiate it from the header, and we want to show that this is content within here. This is separate content. So we also have a containing grid element. We need to make sure that's imported. So grab that from grid. And the reason why we're doing these individual imports is so that we don't pull in the entirety of MUI's component library just for a few components. We want to make sure we do as fewer calls as possible and pull in as little data as possible, as much as we can. We want to centerize this grid, this central grid, and then we want to also add some more grids that is responsive on these levels. So on a medium view, a small view, and an extra small view, this is what we want to do with our spacing. Now this is done in terms of columns. So at maximum, you have about 12 columns generally, and it can go to 12 to 10 to 8, I believe. So this is kind of the responsive setup. So I'll open this up, and within this grid component, we have a box component which contains our avatar. So we want to display our avatar of the user. So for example, we're using this session that we used earlier to grab the username, but we're grabbing the image or the profile image that we're grabbing from Google. And we want to make sure that we're bringing that in as a string. And we've added some sizing here. You can make this any size you want. You can make this huge. You can make this dominate the profile page if you want. And then I've just created some spacing underneath. And then we've also got here a form that we're going to have. And then we're going to have a handle submit function. So we'll just create that now as well, just as a placeholder. And then below here, we have our inputs. So like I said, MUI uses text fields as their inputs. So we'll just import those. I'll just make sure that's individually brought in. Brilliant. So we're grabbing text field from its particular component. Now, what we're doing is we're pulling in some form data, which we haven't set yet. So we'll just create, we're going to use an object for now to do this. So let's go here and just create a random object. So we'll say const form data, and there we go. So that's our dummy data for now. We actually want this as a Boolean. So this is whether we want to receive emails. We're going to add a checkbox for this. So let's go back down here. So that's fine now. So that's got its dummy data. We want to add a onChange handler for the text field. So we'll just go here and create a dummy one for now. And that should be everything. And then obviously we've got our checkbox down here with a form control label. So generally, if you want to add a label to inputs, you use the form control label component, and then you say the control is whatever you pass into it. So it could be a text field or whatever. So we'll make sure that's imported. Make sure this is imported. Cool. Let's go check this up here. Cool. That's all done. And then obviously button as well. Then input button as well. Awesome. So the button here is to save the changes. We want the contain variant, which has the surround, which has the outline and the background fill. And we want to be using primary for this. And we just wanted to say save changes. Again, you can translate this. When I say translate, you basically mean it can change to different languages. So you add a language key, but yeah, that's something you can add to this later. Checkbox. Yep, that's dealing with the receive emails. We've currently set that to false, so this is always not going to be checked until we change that. We're going to change that with state later on. And that's going to be using the primary color from our MUI themes. And then this is our sizing for this, for the grid. So we want it to be full size essentially, because it's going to be using all 12 columns. And that goes for all of these. We're going to be using the full 12 columns, which is 100% width, essentially from the smallest to the largest width sizes. On this one, this text field, we are going to change it to half column size. And same goes with this. So that means that we want these to be side by side. And then we're just adding some spacing here and making sure that this is a container grid, which contains all of the text fields. So cool. Right, let's go have a look to see what that looks like. So this is what the profile page currently looks like. You can see we're pulling in the profile from our Google account. We've got our first name, last name, email, password, and all of that. So essentially this could be a place where you could change your password. You could ask to receive analytic emails from the sales data, for example. So if you want this information to come to your email, you could check a box here to receive it. But we might have an issue. So if I go in here and try to type, I currently can't type. And that's because we haven't set up any state. So let's go do that now so we can actually type stuff into here. So on the text fields, we have our onChange handler, which is handle form change. Right now, this does nothing. So what we want to do is add some state. But before we do this, we actually have to amend this object here, because what this will do is work on this form data, as this is the information we're passing to the objects as the values. So if you go to this text field, we're saying the value is actually in form data, which is here, but form data is just an object that doesn't change. It's a constant. Well, how do we change that? Well, we do that by using state. So all we do is add an array here and put set form data, and we'll destructure it, and we'll go use state, and we will wrap this in parentheses, import use state, grab that from React. And there we go. So now we're saying that we have use state and we have form data as the actual data, but we're not setting it anywhere, but that's fine. That means that first name, last name, email, password, confirm, and received emails are state that we can change now. Currently, the defaults are set to nothing and false here, but we're going to change that with our handle form function here. Let's take this blank function and change it. So what we've done here is we've said that we're targeting the event in the handle form function, and we're grabbing the target for name, value, and check. So these are the things we want from our inputs. And then we are using our useState hook here to set this data. And we're basically using our previous state of whatever we're typing to go into set form data relative to whichever text field we're in. Right, so now that that handle form change is done and we've turned this into state, let's go have a look. So if we go and type in here, we can now actually type in our information, But if we try to submit it, we actually don't get anything. We want to actually be able to submit the information. Let's just make sure the passwords are right. Let's give the form a fighting chance. So it submits. We don't actually grab any of the data. So let's change that now. Now currently our handle submit is just a dummy function similar to handle form change, but we do want to console log the information that we're grabbing. We're now saying that we don't actually want to submit the form when we press it, so it keeps us on the page. So when you saw in the last bit that it refreshed the page when we click submit, this should stop that. And then we're console logging the form data that we have here as well. So we're taking everything from first name to last name and everything we put into the text fields and console logging that. And let's move that just further down so it lives under here. And now if we fill this out with just some dummy data, and then if we say receive sales analytics email, clear this and save changes, we can see that it doesn't refresh the page because we prevented that from happening. And it also gives us all the information that we just submitted. So if you wanted to tie this in with a backend service like Firebase or Prisma or whatever it is you want to use, you now have that ability. But one thing that you may have noticed if we reload the profile page is that when we land on the page, there's no default already set. Now, realistically, you would be pulling in some default information and it wouldn't just be completely blank, because if it's your profile page, it should have your first name and your last name and your email address ready to go. Generally, the password isn't there. That's there for you to change if you want to. So let's make sure we add first name, last name, and email to this profile page. So the first thing we want to do is grab the names from the user session from Next.js, which we've been using this whole time. So we'll grab the name. So we're going to our session, which is from Next.js, and our user, and we're making sure that we're splitting them into by the gap. So there is a gap between the first and last name. So for example, in this case, for this user, it's Curious Byte. So it's going to take the space between them and then split them into two values and into its own array. So we're going to go and tap into that and grab the first name. And so within names, within the first part of the array, for the first index, we're grabbing the first name, and the last name we're simply grabbing here by checking that obviously it exists, and then if it does, that's great, then it puts it in, and if not, it comes back with an empty object because they might not have a surname. So we've just got a little error here, so it's complaining that session username is possibly null or undefined. So what we've done is just making sure that this actually does exist, and if it does, then we do the split. If not, we return an empty array. What we also want to do is just make sure we replace our default state here with our first and last name, and then the email is very simple enough. All we're simply doing is tapping into our session again, and we're saying within the session, grab the user email, and then we'll set it in the email address. And there we go. That should be all our bits of information handled with some default state. The password should be changed by the user, and the received emails we want to stay false and the user can checked or non-checked. Okay, I think that's everything. Let's go check it out. So if we go and have a look now, we can see the profile page does give us the first name and the last name. So we can see that it gives us the first name and the last name now of the user correctly. It also gives us the email address for the profile page. So that's everything that we needed for this. So pretty happy with that. So we'll just go back and tidy up the profile page. So we can see here that we've got some issues here. So implicitly, it's using the any type for the form handle change. So let's go take a look where that's being used. Being used in the text field. So we are going to need to set something here. So once you've changed the return type here, you go here and add another return type for the handle submit. and this should be relevant to the MUI button component, and this should be relevant to the text field components, and you can see that's satisfied there, and the onChange functions are happy. Let's just go double check this is all working and all typed correctly. So we'll put in a password, open the console, save changes, and that works. So we can see that we've added our password and all our other information. Cool. So I think I'm pretty happy with the profile page. Let's go take a look at the settings page. So this is our settings page. We've got a H1 currently, which we probably still want to keep, but we do need to add some infrastructure and get going. Now, what I imagine this being is home, where we have a set of feature toggles. So we kind of toggle on some features and toggle off, and they affect different parts of the dashboard and affect what certain users can see maybe, or what you can see in the dashboard and what features you actually want to use. So let's go add that now. So we can close the profile page and open up the settings page. So just like before, we want to create a React fragment, and let's add our box component. We'll import that, and we'll grab that, and we'll grab typography as well. So again, typography, so we tap into the MUI theming, and we just want to say dashboard features here. And yeah, we want to add some guttering to the bottom, and we want to use the H4 variant for the text size, similar to the profile page. So let's go have a look. There we go, simple enough. Very straightforward, that's all we need. And then we want to add some semantic HTML. So we want to add a form component, and we want to essentially on submit do something. So we want them to click some toggles and then submit the button for those changes to take place and for those changes to be saved. So we'll say, we'll create a handle submit function. So const handle submit, and for now we'll just have that do nothing. And then within here we'll add some markup. So within here we're adding 2 grids, and we want them to be full width. Let's just make sure we import this. So we've imported the grid component. We want this to be in container, and we want this to add spacing. Spacing is essentially like gap in CSS grid. So we're just adding some gap spacing. And then we want these to be full width grid. So let's check out the first one. So we're going to be using a form control component from MUI. Make sure that that's imported. And this is essentially going to have a form because we're going to have our switches in here. So let's import all of this. So this is all the scaffolding you need to use a form in MUI. Form control label, we already spoke about this. This essentially adds labels to our switches, and then you use the switch component here as the control to for that label. So you can see here we've got a bunch of state that we need to add, because we need to set the switch state for revenue and the onChange hit, the profit state, the order state, and the customer state. So let's go add that now. So when you're adding React hooks, you need to make sure that you set them at the top as much as possible within the function component. So we've now got there, but we're not setting this anywhere. We're going to create some handler functions to essentially handle this. So let's do that just underneath. So that basically sets the state using the event handler. So that essentially sets the state by grabbing the checked event from when it changes on the input. And you can see that that's all connected now. We've added some labels here. So we've got orders, customers, profit, and revenue. And that's it essentially for that grid. Let's go check out the other one. So our other grid is essentially going to contain our button that saves the settings. So we'll just import our MUI button. We want that to be very similar, contained primary color, and on submit it does this. We actually want to sort out our on submit handler for this. So we've actually set that at the top here on the form on submit, and because this is a button with a type submit, it automatically gets triggered by this to run this function, which currently does nothing. So we're going to change that now. And then within here, what we'll do is do what we've done before with submit handlers, which is essentially prevent the page from refreshing whilst you build out the logic to send the information to the back end. So that's all the scaffolding set up. We just need to make sure we add the types for this as well. So we can add the button submit one here because we've already done that. Because it's a button component, we already know that that's going to be the form event HTML form element. And then because these are all switch elements, we know that we want these to be change events and that they are HTML input elements. So that should all be typed up nicely. And yep, that's all working. TypeScript's pretty happy with that. So there we go. Let's go take a look. So this is our dashboard page. It's very simple. We essentially have our profits, our orders and customers. So you can choose what features you want. So if you don't want to show revenue, you don't have to. And for an added bonus, you could tie this in with some global state, maybe some React context or Redux, and you could hide and show features or, for example, on the homepage, you could hide and show some of these based off the settings here as an added bonus. But that, I think, is enough really to say that the data dashboard is complete. And we've finished the app. Congratulations if you've made it this far. We've added the settings and profile page. We've amended the header to add a profile link and fix the footer as well, so it's actually at the bottom. If you've made it this far, well done. Hopefully you've got a very cool app at the end of it. There's plenty more to do for yourself if you want to tweak it, make the app your own, maybe have the settings page tweak some more features on and off using context or Redux or any kind of state manager you want to use like Jotai. The world is your oyster. So go have at it, enjoy. And if you found this series useful and if you found my teaching style enjoyable, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter at @thehashton. But other than that, hope you guys have a good one, and I will certainly see you in the next one. Thank you.